everybody can hear me okay, see me okay, and the captions are working on your screen.
Good morning.
Please let me know.
Captions should be working.
Lighting isn't good.
We're going to get started in a couple minutes.
Is
Right on 9 at the dot.
Naomi, if that's you, how can I eliminate, are the videos showing up on my screen sharing?
The videos, no.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the small videos, right?
Right, you are just looking at them.
All right, so as long as the participants aren't looking at all of the videos that I'm looking at.
You mean all the people, are they seeing us?
That's my question.
Yeah, they just see the screen share and you.
Okay. Thank you.
And also I made you the co-host, so you have complete control of everything.
Oh, so we can, in other words, muting and unmuting and things like that.
I think this conversation's happening in a different meeting right now.
And
Anybody who's on right now, if you want to put into the chat box, just so we can see what your background is, that'll kind of help us to gear our presentation a little bit.
While we wait, feel free to turn on your video and introduce yourself. So I'm not talking to just a video of myself for the next hour.
Good morning. I'm excited to learn about all the different things. I'm Lisa Corliss, by the way.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Speech supervisor. LDTC, we got a good variety. That's great.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. Cheryl, since I see you online, can you do me a favor and just let me know that you can hear me fine? All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm trying to work out one other thing on my end tech-wise, but hopefully that will work itself out as we're going along. But I want to make sure I get started on time because I do have quite a bit of information to share. So today we're going to go through using Jamboard to create interactive learning opportunities. And that link that you see or the QR code that you see will take you straight to this slides presentation. I am working on a scenario Paige, I will put the full link in the chat box in just a minute. Since both are blocked for you, I'll go ahead and stick the full slides link up, and it will also be linked in the session notes after I finish this session and session 2. I will add information in. So in the session guide, there is a session's notes for each session. And I would strongly encourage you to go through and add any notes that you need, anything that you feel like is helpful or important. I'm trying to get a second screen up so that I can keep the chat up at the same time. But if you can't get to that bit.ly link, you will be able to access this presentation after we are finished. So just to go ahead and kind of get things started, that's my name, that's who I am, and we're going to go through Jamboard kind of quickly, but you will have all the slides that have all of these resources. So just for today, we're going to go through Jamboard. I'm going to show you some examples, and then hopefully we're going to get in a little bit of actual play interaction time with Jamboard and have some time for questions. So we're going to jump right in and kind of talk about what Jamboard is. It allows you to write and draw. It allows you to search Google and insert an image right from there. It allows you to sketch out and attempt to draw. And for those of us who aren't good at drawing, it will auto-recognize. You can share your jams with up to 50 collaborators. And I think that's where some of the true power in Jamboard happens, especially in this distance learning kind of framework. You can add Google Docs, sheets, or slides, or PDFs into your jam. And one of the things that is Google known, but really does help you out in Jamboard is that you can access them from anywhere. You can pull them up on an iPad, you can pull them up on your Android phone, you can pull them up on a computer, and give you the ability to access no matter where you are. So when would you use Jamboard? So part of what kind of drove me towards looking at Jamboard was when I realized that we're going to need some interactive options. We're going to need the ability to, in our district, interact with kids that may not be sitting right in front of us in brick and mortar. And the more that I kind of started exploring that, the more I realized that Jamboard would kind of meet that need. So I think for the most part, the biggest things that I've discovered that are incredibly helpful in terms of Jamboard is just being able to access everything that you would access in the world of Google, and yet still, for those of us who are therapists, maintain HIPAA compliance, and just if you want that interactive whiteboard function, but you know that being able to utilize that, obviously you can't use a whiteboard in a standard format in a class where you have students that maybe are brick and mortar or students that you're seeing for teletherapy that are in distance learning. So there is a link to some information there. If you are using Google products, there's a link for your IT folks on making sure that if you do need HIPAA compliance, that the BAA or the Business Associates Agreement has been signed. So where do we find it, right? So it's not something that you install. Like most things Google, it is something that just kind of lives in the Google setup. So if you go to your waffle, your tic-tac-toe board, you might have to go down to more in order to be able to find it. But what you're looking for is this little yellow orangish J for jam, okay? And if for some reason you don't see it show up, you might need to go back and ask your IT folks to enable it. But that's what you're looking for to be able to access it on the computer. What happens to those documents once you create it is very similar to what happens to other Google documents. It drops them in the Jamboard location. So whenever you open up Jamboard, what you'll see is something kind of like what's on the right. You will see just the documents that have been opened by you or shared by you. They're all searchable, just like everything else Google. And it's really great if you want to go back and document progress on a student's supports to be able to go back and pull up what they did. So how do we start? Once you're in Jamboard, you're going to look for that little plus sign. They keep changing the colors on me, but essentially you're looking for that little plus sign, and it's going to open up a new, what they call Jam. That is their file name for the actual whiteboard. Every time you open it up, you're opening up a new Jam, okay? Whether you're in the mobile app or you're on the computer, you're looking for that plus, and it's automatically going to save it in your Google account. So how do I share it with others, right? Because a whiteboard's fun, but it's only as interactive as having others collaborate with you. So it works just like all the other things G Suite, right? You go to that the drop down button. I've also heard it called a skinny snowman. So go to that drop down button with the 3 dots and go to share. So from there, you can share it with their email address, just like any other Google Doc. You can share a link with them. If you're in a session with a student and you want to just drop a link in the chat box, you can do that. Or you can do it as a PDF, right? So in our district, we chose to use student emails. So if we're in a session with a student, we're sharing it with their student email, right? We can use a link if they're already in the session. We just drop it in Meet or Zoom, whatever platform you're on. I will sometimes send the PDF of what we did to their teachers or their parents if they want to see what we did during the session. On the web, you have a couple of options in terms of the things that you can do. And it does kind of vary depending on the platform that you're on, and we're going to talk about that. You can change the background. You can add in a number of tools. You'll see you have a pen tool. You have an eraser tool. That arrow or that move tool is really important if you want to be able to move something around after you've made it. The next tool is a sticky note tool. Then you have the ability to add an image from the web-based, or you have a laser pointer, right? And as with most things Google, they like to update things. So since I've made this presentation, they've added 2 more tools to that toolbar on the web, all right? The first is the shape toolbar, and it allows you to add quick shapes. You can go in and get a circle or an arrow. It's really nice for making very quick Venn diagrams. You can go in and quickly grab 2 shapes, 2 circles, and add in your Venn diagram. And you can also just add just the text bar. So you're able to go in and just add free-flowing text. Instead of using maybe the sticky notes, if you want to be able to adjust the text, you can do all those things you see in that GIF on the left-hand side in terms of new tools on the web, okay? If you're on either your iPhone or you're on an iPad, these are the tools that are available to you, and you will see that they are more tools than are available on the web, right? You have your standard pen tools, but under the pen tools, you have 3 little tools under that assistive drawing tools caret that give you access to other things, right? Gives you access to the handwriting recognition, which is really great. If you're like me, you're an OT and you want to work on some handwriting, some letter formation, and we'll go in and play with that and show it to you in a second. It's great for auto shapes. So to be able to go in and quickly draw something and have the computer recognize what it is. And auto draw is one of probably my favorite things to do in this interactive whiteboard, is the ability for you to go in and start drawing something like a bicycle or a monkey, and it guesses what you're drawing and gives you an actual, line drawing of it versus probably the stick figure that I could draw. You still have access to the move tools and the laser pointer. And then under the plus mark, you will see that you have more options of things that you can add in, right? You can now add in Drive content. So I can drop a PDF in, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. You can add in images from the camera or from the image library on your iPad or iPhone, and you can add in what they call stickers. So some of them are the things you see, more emoticon, emojis kind of stickers. And then the bottom ones are outlined gray shapes, which are really great. Like if you're doing brainstorming, you can use those, or if you're doing some emergent writing, there's a clock face if you wanted to practice time. So those are all options on the iOS devices. Similar options are also available on the Android devices. You'll see that you have the assistive drawing tools, right? And you have the ability to add, just like you would do on the iPad, you have the ability to add from Google Drive. Those things are only available on a device, not on the web. So once you do those things and you add them in, Google likes to hide where some of its tools are found, right? So anytime you see 3 dots, it's going to take you to something more, something better, something other. So when you're on your main menu for Jamboard and you go to the 3 dots, you're going to have the option to rename that document, to download it as a PDF, or to delete it. So again, if you're kind of a curious type like me, when you see those 3 dots, go in and try to figure out what those 3 dots will give you options to do. You can organize your work. So just like with everything Google, you can sort it by things that are owned by you, things that are owned by somebody else, when you last modified it, the name. So a lot of times if you're not sure what it is, you either can use the clue of the little snapshot that shows up, or by sorting by somebody shared it with me, I know it's not mine, to be able to organize it. So when you're in Jamboard, there's a couple tools when we get in and play that it's kind of important to know. One is to be able to expand kind of your navigation, or they call it a frame bar. And to do that, you're going to come to the little tiny little drop down caret. And when you do that, this entire little menu or preview shows up. And I've seen teachers use this in very creative ways in terms of giving groups, individual groups, the ability to go in and work on one frame at a time, and then you can monitor what's happening across them by opening up this kind of preview bar. You'll see that there are pluses in the middle where you can go in and add another page. You can click and drag pages around from this view, okay? Now, this is just kind of a summary slide, because if you're like me, sometimes you start thinking, well, where can I do what? So this is a little bit about where you can do what, all right? From the web, again, you can upload images through Google Image Search, Google Drive, or Photos. On the Android and on the iOS, you'll see we've added Drive content, which I think is the biggest difference between the two, is the ability to add Drive content, okay? You can go in and search very quickly on the iOS device. So this is a student that is kind of motivated by doing, I'm going to call it rainbow coloring. And I just went in and I did a Google search for rainbow coloring, and one of the images that came up, you'll see all of them on the right-hand side, was this rainbow. This is all free, able to be used by anybody, rainbow-based pictures that I just dropped into the Jamboard, and then the student could start coloring. Again, you could use this for interactive purposes, but in this case, it was just really a reward for the student because they had done the work that we needed to do before. And I didn't have to do any prep. I just said, hey, what kind of picture do you want to color? And they were like, I want a rainbow. And I'm like, I can make that happen. So Google and I found a rainbow for her to color. So a couple of examples of ways we can make this work. And hopefully you're, starting to already kind of cultivate some ideas in your head, but maybe some of these will be things maybe you haven't come up with yet. So this is a link to a overview of a Jamboard in a Jamboard that Beth Potts made. And it goes through some of the tools. If you click on this slide and this image, it will take you to that Jamboard. Don't do it yet, but it will take you there and you can go back and review. This is an example of a student that we were working on sentence writing with, and we really struggled when we went to virtual and teletherapy in the spring. How are we going to do that interactive sentence writing with them? So we gave them the assignment of writing 3 sentences and gave them basically sticky notes that they could go in and manipulate and move around to form sentences. So anybody who is in the OT world knows who that is on the top left. He is a mat-like man. I'm not going to say he's Mat Man. He's a mat-like man that we might use when we're working with littles who are just learning body parts and orientation. And then you'll see that I made some letter pieces that we could use when we're forming uppercase letters. So that's just another way that you could use it for handwriting. Because again, this is something we would do sitting with a student face-to-face in front of us, but we can't absolutely do that over teletherapy. So this is just another way we can do that. This is a link to ideas that were generated across Twitter. So if you click again on this Jamboard within the presentation, it will open a copy of the Jamboard for you. This is a way that a classroom teacher is doing check-ins. So you could put their name down there. You could put a student number. A lot of our teachers give each student a number for their work or for other things. So they could just drag their number if they wanted to do it anonymously. Just checking in. How are you doing this morning before they start their work? Just a little bit of maybe the ability to do some check-in from a social emotional level. We know that as hard as this has been for us, it has been that much harder for our students in terms of managing this crisis from an emotional place. So being able to use this to just do a quick check-in, I think is helpful. We also have people who use this for student responses, like I was saying with the name and numbers. So this is a class, whether you have 40 some people that you're working in a lecture or you have 15 in your class, you could assign each student a number. These are just sticky notes that then the student could go type their response in, okay? So one of the things I do want to point out is that if you are joining the session and you want to, from a teletherapy perspective, go in and have them join from your iOS device, or if you want to join so that you can show them, there are a couple things that you can do that that will show you how to join from your iOS device. I gave you a couple of short slides, and I just dropped the full presentation link for those of you who maybe can't get to the bit.ly or QR code in the chat box as well. So if you're wanting to join from a Zoom session, all right, which I'm going to do in a minute when we get to play, and you can go to share content and you'll see all these options show up. This happens to be on an iOS a phone, but the same options show up if you're on your iPad. And you would then pick screen. You're going to go and you're going to broadcast your screen to Zoom, okay? So I have a shortcut set up in my control center that does the broadcast quickly so I don't have to go into the settings and then control center. And I can add information into the notes document later today that shows you exactly how to do that. So that's to join Zoom. In our district, we are using Google Meet. So this is how you would do it via Google Meet. Basically, you're joining the Google Meet presentation through your iPad, all right? And this is something you can do before the students ever enter your Jamboard session. You can have your iPad in that session, right? And again, the same thing from your Android device. You do want to make sure that you're muting sound on one of the two devices. Otherwise, you will get that nasty echo feedback that nobody wants to hear in their ear. And you just do get a message that says, people are going to see everything on your screen. You click start presenting, and it's going to give you this little reminder. You can check that box where it says don't show again if you don't want to see that message every time. But it'll just tell you, hey, you know what, just FYI, Meet's going to capture what's showing on your screen, and you click start now. That will join your iPad into that. So now what we are going to attempt to do is join a jam. Now, I am going to drop the direct link to the jam for those of you who are aren't able to join with a short link. So I'm going to drop that link in. This will take you to what I'm going to call a play jam. All right. And I'm going to open that up on my screen so that you can see from the desktop end. Oh, Google giving us problems because too many people are in it. There we go. So if that happens and you get a weird message, just refresh it and it will come back up again. So there is a 20 screen limit, right? So only 20 people and only 20 pages can be in at a time. And you can only have 50 people in a jam at a time. So if we max out and we have more than 50 people in right now, you might just have to go back in later and play, okay? So I know that there's a lot of traffic right now and everybody and their brother's trying to get into this jam, but if you will just give it a minute, it is going to load because technology is going to be my friend today. And I am going to bring up that jam over here. Let me just refresh it and see if I can get it to come. Apparently this jam is too interesting to people. So everybody wants to be in. So the generated code function, Karen, is if you are using a physical Jamboard, that's what allows you to connect to their actual product. That is a Jamboard, like they make an interactive whiteboard. So what you can do on the iPad, if you take that short link or copy that link into Safari, it will allow you to join that way. So you can go and put that link into Safari and it's going to ask you to open that link with Safari. And there, I think I have a tutorial of that in a little bit, but so you'll see when you open up a Jamboard, and if you can't get in now, again, you can go back in and play a little bit. Yep, you'll see, please feel free to go get a pen tool, draw, come over. Like I said, there's on the web, there's a bunch of pen tool choices, grab a pen, try out the little features of typing in a text box. And what you'll see on my screen is what you would see on the use end, is that you see a little teeny teardrop image of whoever it is that's doing this, right? In terms of Chromebooks, basically the Chromebook shows you what the web-based version is. I haven't been on my Chromebook in a while, but I think they have the text tools and the circle. And so you should be able to do everything that you can do on the web on the Chromebook, okay? Now, if you wanted to add in a PDF or something, and I'm gonna show you how to do that in a minute, you could add it in from your iOS device and then have it to interact. Oh, somebody went after Elf. That's an awesome character, love it. So again, you figured out you can go in and search an image, you can draw, you can add in a sticky note, you could do some coloring. I see somebody's making a diamond, that's awesome. You could add in, again, that free form text. Somebody really loves the character Elf and wants to circle it. And you'll see, I can see who is doing what as it happens. And I think that's really helpful because especially maybe if you're doing a group of 2 or 3, or even if you're doing a whole class, you can see who is doing what. So if you're asking them all to take a turn and somebody's jumping in and going ahead of where you want them to go, you can go in and say, hey, you know what? Like you need to wait for just a second, let this person have a turn. And then you can kind of call them out and they don't know necessarily that you can see every move that they're making. So it is kind of a little big brotherish, but I think it does allow us to see if you're working with 2 students in a group, which student made that line or did that specific activity. So now that I love that, I tried my best. Now that you've gotten to play around on this slide, I want you guys to practice navigating. You're gonna go up to the top where the page sorter is, and you're just gonna go to the next frame. So I want you to come over to frame 2, okay? And so what I've done is kind of set up, and I see some people are in there playing in frame 2 already. That's completely okay. This is your explore and play and learn time. So the best way I know how to kind of gather information, and again, you can insert from a couple different places, is adding sticky notes. So if you want a student to participate, you can go in and you can say, okay, Joey, your color sticky note is blue. And every time Joey goes in, he can change the color of the sticky note to blue, and he can write, you know, whatever his response is, right? So then every time you see Johnny's blue sticky note show up, right, you know you can go in and know that that was Johnny's work. And again, you kind of have to monitor. And as someone put in the chat box, yes, absolutely, you know, some digital citizenship I think is important for our kids, regardless of what platform you're using, because I think we're all kind of in this new stage of doing lots and lots of digital work. And I think it's ever more important for our students to know right and wrong when it comes to the digital platform. And yes, Karen, you could absolutely say, if you've got 20 kids in your class, Johnny, you have frame 1, Joey, you have frame 2, et cetera, and have them limit their work to 1 frame, right? That's another option of a way that you could get in and utilize it, all right? So in terms of being able to insert things and go in and insert sticky notes and images, I think you guys have figured that out. You figured out how to go in and insert a shape, right? Yep. And a lot of you guys are going in and finding some great activities. Yep. Matching and sorting activities would be really great in terms of things that people can do. Math problems, especially math problems that revolve around using manipulatives. Again, that's something we can't easily replicate what those math problems would be if we were giving them manipulatives, you know, base 10 cubes or whatever in the classroom, but we can build in digital manipulatives. Drag and drop activities could work. Again, writing our sentences, fine motor computer skills. For my students that are doing pre-writing or writing, I am either encouraging those parents to utilize their pointer fingers or to utilize a small stylus. You can absolutely add a stylus and have them work on that tripod grasp. Is it the exact same as paper and pencil? No, but it does give us the ability to somewhat replicate what's happening. And so my little friend with the little blue elk has figured out the laser pointer. That laser pointer tool is really great for drawing attention to something quickly, because again, unlike a line, you draw it and then it disappears. So I can come and say, all right, everybody come find the house, draw visual attention to it, and then it disappears. It's a great way to help get students right back on task, right? So we're gonna go to the next frame, which is frame 3. And this is an example of a PDF that I had in my Google Drive that I was able to upload from my iPad. Now I can tell who's in frame 3, right? If I bring it down, I can see there's some people still playing in frame 1 and frame 2. So from a classroom monitor perspective, I can see where students are just by bringing down this little frame caret. So then I can come in and I can see, this is, again, I'm on my Mac computer. I'm not an iPad, but this I uploaded from the iPad, right? So I can add a worksheet from the iPad, drop it in and rotate it and then have it available for that student, right? So what you can do on what you can do on the computer is very different than what you can do on an iPad. And so I will encourage, you know, setup of something on the iPad and then utilizing the desktop computer maybe during therapy. Our therapists are very lucky this year that they have iPads, something I fought for, knowing we were going to do teletherapy, so they can join the jam from their iPad during therapy, maybe while they're on their Google Meet for students. So students can see where other students are by clicking on their caret. Yes. So that's kind of a Google across the board. If I come and I want to know where the little red fox person is, I can come and I can double click and it takes me to where they are. Let me get this back up, right? So, and I can go in and say, all right, where is my anonymous beaver? And if I double click, it'll take me to where they are. Or anybody can drop down the page, and again, you see your little characters. If your students are using Google, instead of these anonymous characters, right? Because you're logged in anonymously since this is the document I shared with you. But if you share it by email with Joe Smith, your student, what's going to show up is his little Google Joe Smith icon. So it's a little easier when you're working with your students because it's going to show who they are and not anonymous beaver or elk and all these things that Google gives us, right? So again, this is an example of a worksheet where we're working on name writing. I might start with the student, and let's say that they're on the computer and I just want them to try. We know it's not going to be super accurate, but I want them to try making an S with their computer. And maybe let's say they're still writing all capital letters, they can try making an A. And if I'm like, you know what, let's try that again, I can go get a highlighter pen and I can give them a stroke that I want them to come in. That was actually pretty good for the laptop trackpad. That I want them to come back with their pen and try again and say, okay, get your marker and start where I start at your starting point and go down, all those great letter writing tools that we would do. So Karen, when you open it in Safari, and on the slideshow, there's this up on the top, you get a little, if you have the Jamboard app on your computer, you get a little message if you swipe up or swipe down that says, open this Jamboard in the Jamboard app. And then it will open up and all of the assistive tools will be available, okay? So yeah, you could have somebody come in and practice writing their name. That's beautiful, Jessica. You did a great job making your letters. Now you can say, all right, it's your turn. Now, Jessica, what I want you to do, I want you to pay really close attention to me making a really horrible line, to this line down here. And let's see, can you get your letters to sit on that line? So she can come in and try again to get her letters to sit on the line. Or if I need to, now that I've got a shapes tool, I could come and I could say, you know what, let's just really hone in on that J. Hey, Jessica, can you get your J to sit right inside my box? So again, you can go in and figure out how can you do things that maybe I would have done right in front, you know, in front of that student. You can have them come in and try to where they can get their J to fit right inside the box if sizing is an error or something like that. Jessica, you're doing awesome getting it to sit on the line. I'm going to guess that you're using your mouse or your trackpad, and that is fantastic because it's a very hard thing to do on the mouse or trackpad. So you guys have discovered the erase tool, right? It's another really helpful thing. If we move over to number 4, we're going to move over one more frame. I'm going to show you this one. So this is just a sort that I did. I use zones of regulation in my district. So this is a quick sort I did as a warm-up. So you could come in and say, this is where it's important to make sure you have the right tool. Right now I have the pen tool, right? And if I tried to grab a picture, it's gonna draw on the picture. You can undo that real quick. I need to get my arrow tool, and you can move whatever picture you think wherever it needs to go, and you could resize it or, you know, move it around. Or if a kid is a little bit more advanced and they don't need the pictures here, you could say, all right, I want you to go find a picture that matches how you're feeling and put it in the right category, those kinds of things, to be able to get things in the right place. And this is where, if you're on your iPad, you could use those emojis, those little stickers that pop up. That's where I got some of these. You could get a text box or a sticky note and write it. Let's say you didn't want to put a picture in or something, but you could go get a text box. And again, another way we could just provide some interaction. Again, we're not going to replicate what's happening right in front of us in brick and mortar maybe, but this gives you some interaction, okay? So I want to stop for a second, and A, I'm going to check the chat box on my other computer, and B, I want you to come over to slide or jam frame 5. I love that picture that you just put in. Sometimes that is absolutely how I feel, dropping myself in the red zone because I just want to throw my hands up in frustration. So I want you to come over to 5, and I want you to either use your text tool or use a sticky note. And I set this up as an activity of trying to get the kid to come up with something that they're grateful for. In this case, you could go in and come up with something that you've learned so far about Jamboard. You could do it as a check for understanding with students. If you're doing something, you could have them, again, I just went and got a picture of corkboard and put it in there, put it on the background. I can force that to go to the back. Right now it's sitting in the back. I could force it to be in the front. So somebody's grateful for health. Again, this is just another way to kind of get some interaction. Oh, you're so sweet, whichever anonymous fox or bug or whoever. You're quite welcome. I love Jamboard and I spend a lot of time playing with it. So this is just another way to kind of get some interaction. And again, in this case, this is completely anonymous interaction, right? I can't tell unless I really look closely at who's writing what's getting up there. I didn't ask them to write their name. I didn't ask them to, to add anything specific. I just wanted them to give me the answer to the question, right? So it's another way to get lots and lots of information. And it could be very, very basic. Can you find out later who wrote what? Not super easily. And again, that's where I would use the assigning a Post-it note. Maybe this is a board that you put Post-it notes up and put the 1 through 20 in, and number 19 is the student that you always have being number 19 in your class. I use something like this in a case where I don't necessarily want to know, right? I just want information. I just want to know what they know, and I want to use it as a whole class check for understanding, right? All right, slide number 6 or frame number 6. Move on over. And again, this is another example of a worksheet that I brought in that I took a picture of this worksheet. I took a screenshot because I wasn't on my iPad and I couldn't go and drop the PDF in, right? And I think because my iPad is not wanting to join right now, and it's more because I'm at my office and it's not on the right Wi-Fi. But I will put a video, a short screen sharing video up in the notes document later today that shows you how to join from your iPad and what the iPad features are. I will add that. But this is just an activity that I took a screenshot of, and you could come in and have them, circle watermelon, and maybe you have a kid that's working on typing, so you don't want them to write in the traditional paper and pencils setup. You want them to go in and type it, so you could have them go in and type using the text tool watermelon. So again, you're working on some visual perceptual skills from the OT perspective, but I think this is a lot more engaging way to do it than to say to a student, pick up that paper and pencil in front of you, right? Let me look and see. I want to do one more maybe. Okay, so I want to show you slide. If you go over to Jam 10, I see you guys moving. It's kind of creepy to see people moving, but you'll see, so this is the setup I made that is more in a handwriting without tears kind of setup, to where you could go in and you could move the pieces to be able to make capital letters. And again, I maybe wouldn't have all of these pieces there all at the same time. So yep, somebody's got a good D going. Somebody's got a lowercase r going. So again, if you've got 2 or 3 students that you would do this with a small group, I have classes where they're doing this on Jamboard, even though they're in brick and mortar, because we don't want them to share wood pieces with the possible contamination, just kind of minimizing that risk. This is another way to work on it. It is not as good as having the wood pieces in your hand and interacting with them. But I think it does do the goal that we're working for, which is learning what pieces make what letters. You're going to continue to have access to this. So I put some other examples in here that you can kind of go in and play with. I put some other backgrounds in that you can go in and play with. Frame 12 is just an activity that I have in a Google Slides presentation, but I made it interactive. I added in a circle and a square, which I did in auto draw. You could use the shape tool. And I just said, you know, okay, the student could come in and trace the letter, or I could use one to trace the letter and then somebody else could do it. Then they could get their pen to trace the A. And in this case, it has them do an exercise and then it has them write it on paper. So again, a way we could do some interaction in a way that gives us the ability to, excuse me, to be able to work in text in a way that like maybe we can't do face-to-face, but then, yep, you could come in and work on making the letter A with them. So I am going to jump back to my slideshow because we are almost out of time. Again, you have access to that jam. I have copies of it, so you do not need to worry about if for some reason, you know, you erase something, don't worry about it. That is for you to kind of play and learn. And then Karen, you'll see, this is the screenshot. I knew I had it in here that shows you, if you open it up in Safari, you'll see this open Jamboard app across. And if you click open, it will open it up in the Jamboard app. Just a few more things. Just to kind of jump in, I do want to make sure if you have any questions, I see one from Ashley, I will get to in just a second, that you have an opportunity to ask those. I want to point out that at the end of this presentation, when you get the slides link or look at it, you'll see that there are a number of other slides. These are videos that walk through Jamboard, tutorials for teachers, just extra pieces of information, as well as ways to get images in. They're all tutorials that I had made for other places, other students, and I figured I would just leave them in the back of this presentation so that if it would be helpful to you, you have access to them as well. Other questions, Ashley, dictate into a text box, read and write. I was able to dictate using the regular like operating system speech to text. But I do know that's something that Google's also working on integrating directly. For the trace the letter frame 12, did I insert a background picture to trace the letter? So on frame 12, it is a picture. And when I put the picture in, I just sent it to the back. It was the easiest way to kind of get the picture in there. I could have dropped the PDF in there. Or, you know, from the slides, but that way I just took a screenshot of the picture and dropped it in the Jamboard. Other questions? If you have questions as you're getting in and playing with it, please feel free to reach out. Again, this is the link to the, what is the difference to explain everything? So this is free. So that's one big thing that's different between Explain Everything. And I think if you are using Google Tools already, it is really directly integrated. Is there a way to save a Jamboard that someone shared that you don't have access to? So yeah, you can go in, and what I will usually ask people to do is make a copy of it. So if you don't have edit access, you cannot make a copy. I am fairly certain. I will double check that. And if I find out differently, I'll drop that in the session notes. But if somebody shared it, and there are some links to other Jamboards out there, I am gonna put in the chat box, I completely forgot to do this, but I'm gonna put in the chat box a link, and in the notes document, a link to the Wakelet collection that I have that's all about Jamboard. And this Wakelet collection has links to Jamboards in addition to information about Jamboard, if that makes sense, because that was a lot in one sentence. There are templates in here. There are videos in here, getting started videos, but then there's also links directly to other templates that force a copy. So some of the ones that you saw on here are ones that I went in and forced a copy and kind of adapted it. So I am going to drop this in the chat box. I might have to go in and make it visible. I think I have it so that anybody who has the link can see it, but yep. All right, so I will put that link also in the in the notes document that you can go back and refer to, but that has a bunch of extra information in it as well. Feel free to email me. There's my email. You can also reach out to me on Twitter, which for some reason is on some of the slides, but I didn't put in there. So that's me on Twitter. Feel free to reach out. Yes, Mike and the folks at NGAT Summit are going to post all of the links to the recordings on that same session document. So where the session links are, you'll have access to the recordings. You know, Zoom takes a little bit of time to be able to process them. But, oh, you're welcome, Beth. I'm glad that you picked up something new and fun. So like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about it. And I'm happy to hang out for just a little bit. So Paige, I'm going to put the Wakelet link in the session notes document, and it's also in the chat. I know I popped it in the chat, and then I'm pretty sure it flew by because there were 15 people commenting at once, but I'll make sure it's in the session notes document as well. I'm trying to run this from 2 computers and an iPad, and you know, sometimes I post things in the wrong spot. So you guys are welcome. Make sure you take a stretch break. I'm going to go do that because otherwise it would be very bad to go and do an ergonomics presentation next and not have taken a movement break. But I can hang on. Yes. Sorry, it was Jamboard on steroids. It's always super fast, and I just want to get everything in one space for everybody to know about it because I think it's probably Google's most underutilized tool, and it makes me sad because it's an amazing tool. All right. Stop sharing my screen. Again, I'm happy to hang out for a sec if there are questions. Yeah, I think it's great for distance learning. I think it's a great tool to be able to help get that interaction and classroom kind of supports going in addition to that individual therapy setup. I think it's really helpful.
Elisa, this was great. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. I'm glad that you were here and it was helpful for you. They keep changing things up. So
yeah, this afternoon I'm doing one on 3 best tools for distance learning, but I didn't add Jamboard. I have to add the 4th one. It's Jamboard. Oh,
yeah, it's awesome. I really love it as a tool, and I think it's just so flexible. You know,
so
like
have you been
there's
using it a
different
lot?
ways.
Are you all distance learning right now?
We're a mix of everything. We have students brick and mortar in person. We have students that are digital academy attached to those classes, but at home. And then we have students that are 100% virtual. And so we've got a mix of everything. And so, yeah, our therapists are using it in teletherapy. I've got teachers using it in the classroom, whether their students are brick and mortar or at home. Yeah, we've got quite a bit of use happening, and I'm really excited about seeing what I've seen so far in terms of just student engagement. I think if I can get them to buy in to participate in an activity because I'm doing it in Jamboard, like I'm all for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. Thank you. See you later.
No problem. See you later.